At one point in every gamer's life, they've been right here. Huh? A lot of us take for granted how hard it really is to get into the hobby of playing games. When you grow up playing games, you build skills and you just intuitively know what to do because you built the skill before you could probably even remember building it. I think a really eye-opening experience for me is watching other people play games who don't normally play games. When Elden Ring first came out, my dad came and was watching me for a little bit, and eventually he decided he wanted to try it. Almost immediately, he jumped from way too high, died, lost all my souls, and I just couldn't help but laugh. And all he said to me was, "How was I supposed to know that was gonna kill me?" And I never really gave it much thought before that. How do people learn how to play games later in life? Some games do a really great job, some do a terrible job, and others, I don't know, you're gonna have to figure it out, man. The most tried and true classic example of a tutorial is either a little prompt that disrupts the entire game, or they just show you the command at somewhere in part of the screen. For the most part, these aren't very intrusive, they're pretty harmless, but I don't think it really does a great job of teaching the player. Celeste is one of my favorite examples on how to teach a player how to play your game and how the mechanics work, but also keeping it immersive. Platformers as a genre is most likely the easiest to understand for anyone playing games for the first time. If you see exciting stuff on the other side of the screen, you're instinctively gonna just wanna walk over to it. Most people are just gonna know you can jump, but outside of that, you're gonna have to teach them. The first gameplay moment of Celeste has you on a screen where you have to learn how to jump. You might learn that falling objects will crush you, but most importantly, you get to learn how to climb. A lot of games in this situation would take a pause, tell you how to do the mechanic, where you can do the mechanic, how it works, a lot of extra details that you probably don't immediately need. But Celeste has this little bird that'll tell you that you can climb, what the button is, and what the button looks like. Lots of times when people are unfamiliar with a controller and you tell them to press X or A, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna look down and say, "Where is A?" and they have to search and find it. It's inevitable, but showing the player what the button looks like is a huge help for them. It takes off so much burden and they can be like, "Oh, that's the button I need. Great." Even better than this is the moment that follows after on the falling bridge. The music swells up as this bridge collapsing. It's getting more and more intense. You look like you're about to fall, and then bam, the bird comes back. He teaches you can air dash and how to do it. This is such a memorable way on how to teach your player a core mechanic of your game. It is so exciting, it's so immersive. For a new player, you probably forget you're in a tutorial. I think most other genres have it pretty rough though. Trying to teach a player how to move around a 2D environment is one thing, but once you add the Z-axis, it gets so much harder. Depth perception, momentum mechanics, so many things go into 3D platformers that make them a lot harder than their 2D counterparts. Telling your player how to move around isn't nearly enough, so the first environment you throw them in is really going to make or break the experience. Super Mario 64 is considered the greatest 3D platformers have to offer, and the castle grounds have to be the most underrated part of that game. Lakitu tells you a couple controls, but it's mostly left to the player to figure out how Mario moves and interacts with the environment. Peach's Castle Grounds is a vast open environment which lets you get used to how Mario runs, how he triple jumps, how he side flips, how he long jumps. It's a really safe area and it lets you get a feel for how Mario moves. There are climbable trees that show you that Mario can climb and jump off of poles. There's a vast open swimming area that gets you used to the swimming controls. It is super overlooked because 99% of players just probably ran straight to the castle and overlooked it. But for a new player, this does a really great job of showing them everything they need to know. In a case like Mario 64, you're mostly left to figure out what the buttons do by just pressing them and seeing what they do. But some games will go the other route and tell you way too much, way too fast. RPGs are criminal for this. It's already a very daunting genre for a new player to get into. A platformer will take you usually about an hour to get comfortable with, and the whole entire journey is probably only around 10 hours. Let's look at Persona 5 for example. The first 10 hours of the game is the tutorial. It feels like every 10 minutes they're telling you about a new mechanic, how to interact with the environment, things you have to do. It is so overwhelming, and I'm someone who's played a lot of RPGs. And the way they usually do this is through like screen prompts. Nothing breaks a game's immersion for me like these. Having to squint to my TV and read about something I need to learn about, it just kills it for me. And if you're new to RPGs, this is probably all stuff you're really gonna need to know to get the full enjoyment out of the game. I can get away with kind of skipping past some of it because it's like, oh, this is just normal RPG stuff. But if you're not familiar with this, you're going to get frustrated and you're probably going to give up on one of the best RPGs of all time, which is a shame. One of my favorite RPGs of all time, Earthbound, takes a complete opposite approach to this. The opening cutscene happens, you change out of your pajamas, and bam, you're walking to a crash site.
You kind of scope the area out, but it's hard to figure anything out with the cops all around, so you go home for the night. Later in the night, Porky knocks on your door and he asks for help finding his brother who got lost at the crash site.
The second time you go out, your mom tells you about a cracked T-bat in your sister's room, but you don't have to grab it. There's a lot of things you can do in this intro, but it doesn't force you to. It doesn't tell you you have to do something or how to do it. Earthbound is really good about not directly telling you anything. If you want to figure something out, you either have to do it yourself or you have to talk to people around the town. I think this really works out in Earthbound's favor because it encourages you to talk to everyone you see. And if you're not talking to everyone you see, you're probably going to miss out on some of the best dialogue in an RPG. Do I think this is better than the way Persona teaches? Not really. It's harder to learn things. You have to really go out of your way. You might even have to look up some things. But I think it works so much more better organically in the world than Persona does. Very few games nail the head perfectly on their tutorials. Conveying to a player how to play your game without alienating them is really hard, but it is doable, and I hope in the future we get a lot of more bangers.
Alright, now if you'll excuse me, I gotta get back to playing Persona 5.